The stagecoach rattled to a stop in a cloud of dust as Beatrice Morgan clutched her two children to her sides, her knuckles white with fear and exhaustion. Whispers of Willow Creek being a safe haven had brought her here, but the haunted look in her eyes told of horrors she'd left behind. It was 1879, and the frontier town in Wyoming Territory was nothing but a handful of weathered buildings set against the vast, unforgiving landscape that had already claimed so many dreams. "Last stop, madam," the driver called out, his voice gruff from years of tobacco and trail dust. Beatrice stepped down, helping 6-year-old Emma and 4-year-old James to the ground. Their clothes were worn but clean, a testament to her determination to keep some semblance of dignity despite everything they'd endured. She adjusted her simple bonnet, a futile attempt to look presentable after 3 days of hard travel. "Mama, I'm hungry," James whispered, tugging at her skirt. "Soon, darling," she promised, though the few coins in her purse felt impossibly light. The townspeople barely glanced their way, accustomed to drifters and those seeking new beginnings. Beatrice stood frozen, clutching her small carpetbag in one hand and James's tiny fingers in the other, while Emma pressed against her side. "You look like you could use some help, madam." The voice came from behind her, deep and steady as the distant mountains. Beatrice spun around, instinctively pulling her children closer. The man before her stood tall, his broad shoulders blocking the afternoon sun. His face was weathered but kind beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and his blue eyes held no malice, only a gentle curiosity. "I don't need charity," she said quickly, though her trembling voice betrayed her. He nodded slowly, respect in his gaze. "Not offering charity, just neighborliness." "Name's Tucker Hayes." He gestured toward a modest building down the street. "I run the general store, got a room above it that's sitting empty." Beatrice swallowed hard. I don't have much." Tucker's eyes fell to the children, their wide, hungry gazes making something in his expression soften further. "You'll only know peace here, madam. Willow Creek's a good place for fresh starts." Something in his words, or perhaps the way he said them without pity, made Beatrice's shoulders drop slightly. "I'm Beatrice Morgan. These are my children, Emma and James." Tucker tipped his hat to the children, earning a shy smile from Emma. "Pleased to meet you all. Now, how about we get you settled before nightfall?" As they walked down the dusty main street, Beatrice couldn't help but notice how Tucker kept a respectful distance, yet somehow made her feel protected for the first time in months. She didn't trust it, couldn't afford to, but for tonight, at least, her children would have a roof over their heads. The room above the general store was simple but clean, with a bed large enough for her and the children, a small table with 2 chairs and a wash basin. A window overlooked the main street, framing the mountains in the distance. "It's not much," Tucker said, setting down her carpetbag. "It's perfect," Beatrice whispered, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "Store opens at 7, closes at 6. You're welcome to help yourself to whatever you need for breakfast. We can discuss the rest tomorrow." Tucker moved toward the door, then paused. "Mrs. Morgan?" "Miss," she corrected automatically, then flushed. If Tucker was surprised, he didn't show it. "Miss Morgan, whatever brought you here?" "It's behind you now." After he left, Beatrice sat on the edge of the bed, allowing herself a single, quiet tear as her children explored the room with excited whispers. Tucker Hayes seemed decent enough, but experience had taught her that kindness often came with unseen costs. Still, as she watched Emma and James settle into their first peaceful sleep in months, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they had found a place where the past couldn't reach them. Dawn broke over Willow Creek, painting the humble buildings in golden light. Beatrice had been awake for hours, watching the town come to life from her window. Below, she could see Tucker sweeping the boardwalk in front of his store, nodding to early risers making their way to the cafe down the street. "Mama, can we go outside?" Emma asked, already dressed in her second-best dress. "After breakfast," Beatrice promised, running a hand through her daughter's dark curls. "Remember what I told you both, we must be on our best behavior." James nodded solemnly, "because the nice man is letting us stay in his house." "That's right," Beatrice said, straightening his collar, "and we need to find a way to thank him properly." They made their way downstairs, finding the store already open. Tucker was arranging a display of canned goods when they appeared. "Good morning," he called cheerfully. "Sleep well." "Yes, thank you," Beatrice replied, conscious of her children's curious gazes taking in the shelves stocked with everything from tools to fabric to candy jars. "Help yourselves to breakfast," Tucker said, gesturing to a small stove in the back corner where a pot of oatmeal simmered. Mrs. Jenkins from the bakery brought over fresh bread, too. The children's eyes widened at the simple feast, and Beatrice felt a familiar pang of inadequacy. "Mr. Hayes, I must insist on working for our keep. I can't accept," Tucker held up a hand. "Miss Morgan, I won't hear of your family going hungry. As for work." He glanced around the store. "Truth is, I could use help around here. Previous assistant moved on to Denver last month." Beatrice hesitated. "I don't know anything about running a store. Can you count and write?" When she nodded, he continued, "Then you're qualified. Nothing to it but keeping ledgers straight and helping customers find what they need." As the children ate their breakfast, Beatrice followed Tucker around the store, taking notes as he explained the inventory system and showed her where everything was kept. By mid-morning, she was helping her first customer, a rancher's wife, looking for sewing notions. Tucker watched from across the store as Beatrice patiently helped the woman select thread that matched her fabric. There was something graceful about the way she moved, despite the wariness that never quite left her eyes. "You've got a natural way with people," he commented when the customer left. "I worked as a teacher before." Beatrice trailed off, busying herself with reorganizing spools of thread. Tucker didn't press. "The school here could use someone with experience. Teacher we had took sick last winter, never quite recovered." Beatrice's hands stilled. "I couldn't possibly." "I'm not staying, Mr. Hayes." "Tucker," he corrected gently. "And why not? Seems to me your children could use some stability." "You don't know anything about us," she said, her voice sharper than intended. Tucker nodded, accepting the rebuke. "You're right, I apologize." The awkward moment was interrupted by James tugging at Tucker's pant leg. "Mister, do you have any horses?" Tucker crouched down to the boy's level. "I surely do. Got a mare named Penny who pulls my delivery wagon. Would you like to meet her?" James nodded eagerly, and even Emma looked interested from her spot by the candy jars. "Perhaps after lunch," Beatrice suggested, softening at her son's excitement. "If it's no trouble." "No trouble at all," Tucker assured her with a smile that reached his eyes. "It'd be nice to have company at the stables. Gets lonely talking to a horse all day." Later that afternoon, Tucker led them to a small stable behind the store. Inside, a chestnut mare whickered softly in greeting. "This here's Penny," Tucker said, producing an apple from his pocket. "Gentlest horse in the territory." He showed James how to hold his hand flat to feed her, and the boy's delighted laughter when Penny's velvety muzzle tickled his palm was the first genuine joy Beatrice had heard from him in months. Even Emma, usually so reserved, asked to try. "You're a natural, Miss Emma," Tucker praised, and the girl practically glowed with pride. Watching them, Beatrice felt something inside her chest loosen just a fraction. Tucker Hayes was unlike any man she'd met before, patient, kind, and without any apparent agenda. It was disarming in a way that both comforted and terrified her. "Thank you," she said quietly as they walked back to the store. "They needed this." Tucker glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Children are resilient, but they need more than just safety. They need joy too." Beatrice looked away, blinking back sudden tears. "Joy has been in short supply lately." "Well," Tucker said, his voice deliberately light, "Willow Creek might not look like much, but we've got joy in abundance. You just have to know where to look for it." That evening, after closing the store, Tucker insisted on treating them to dinner at the local cafe. The owner, a plump woman named Martha, fussed over the children and served them portions large enough to ensure leftovers for breakfast. "Tucker Hayes, you've been holding out on us," Martha scolded good-naturedly. "Didn't tell us you had family coming to visit." "They're not," Tucker began, but Martha was already hurrying back to the kitchen for pie. "I'm sorry about that," he said to Beatrice. "Martha means well, but she's the town's leading gossip." "It's all right," Beatrice assured him, though she'd stiffened at Martha's assumption. "People will talk regardless of what we say." Tucker studied her across the table. "Does that bother you, what people might think?" Beatrice cut James's meat into smaller pieces before answering. I've learned that people's opinions rarely matter in the grand scheme of things. Wise words, Tucker nodded. Still, might be easier if we give folks something true to talk about instead of letting them make up stories. What do you mean? I'm offering you a job, Miss Morgan, official-like, assistant at the general store with fair wages and that room for as long as you need it. Tucker leaned forward. No strings attached and no questions about whatever it is you're running from. Beatrice's fork clattered against her plate. How did you been running a store in a frontier town for 8 years? Tucker said quietly. I know the look of someone who's escaping something. Don't need to know what it is, just need you to know you're safe here. Tears threatened again, and Beatrice fought them back. I can't make any promises about staying. Not asking for promises, just giving you a chance to catch your breath. That night, after tucking her children into bed, Beatrice stood by the window watching the quiet street below. Tucker's offer was more generous than she deserved, and certainly more than she'd expected when the stagecoach had dropped them in this dusty town. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't dictated by fear, a future where Emma and James could grow up in peace, where she might rebuild something of the life she'd once dreamed of. It was a dangerous hope, but as she watched Tucker lock up the store below, his movements deliberate and sure, she couldn't quite extinguish it. The next few weeks passed in a blur as Beatrice settled into a routine at the general store. Tucker was a patient teacher, showing her how to manage inventory and deal with various suppliers. The children quickly became favorites among the townspeople, with Emma often helping elderly Mrs. Patterson sort buttons, while James became Tucker's enthusiastic assistant during deliveries. That boy of yours has a way with horses, Tucker commented one evening as they closed up shop. Penny practically melts when he brushes her. He's always loved animals, Beatrice said, smiling at the memory of James's collection of carved wooden creatures that had been left behind in their flight. His father. She stopped abruptly, the smile fading. Tucker hung up his apron, pretending not to notice her discomfort. Clear night tonight, stars will be something to behold. Grateful for the change of subject, Beatrice nodded. Emma's been learning about constellations from that book you lent her. Smart girl, Tucker said with genuine admiration. Reminds me of my sister at that age. Always had her nose in a book. You have a sister. Beatrice realized how little she knew about the man who had shown them such kindness. Had, Tucker corrected gently. Lost her and my parents to influenza when I was 20, came out west after that, needed a fresh start. I'm sorry, Beatrice said, understanding all too well the need to escape painful memories. Tucker shrugged. Was a long time ago, made my peace with it. He hesitated, then added, might do you good to talk about whatever you're carrying when you're ready. Beatrice stiffened. There's nothing to talk about. Didn't mean to pry, Tucker said easily, though his eyes held concern. Just offering an ear if you need one. Later that week, disaster nearly struck when a group of rough-looking men rode into town. Beatrice was helping a customer when she spotted them through the window, and the blood drained from her face. Tucker noticed immediately. Miss Morgan, you all right? She couldn't speak, her throat closing with terror as she watched the men dismount outside the saloon. Tucker followed her gaze. You know those fellows? She shook her head quickly, too quickly. No, I should check on the children. They're at Mrs. Patterson's for another hour, Tucker reminded her gently. Beatrice, if there's trouble. There's no trouble, she insisted, though her hands trembled as she straightened merchandise that didn't need straightening. Tucker didn't push, but he kept a close eye on her for the rest of the day. When she jumped at every customer who entered, he finally made a decision. Why don't you take the children for a picnic this afternoon? He suggested, handing her a basket he'd quietly prepared. There's a nice spot by the creek just outside town. I'll mind the store. Beatrice recognized the offer for what it was, a chance to get away from whatever had frightened her, and gratitude overwhelmed her. Thank you, Tucker. I don't deserve your kindness. Nonsense, he said firmly. Everyone deserves kindness. Some folks just haven't had their fair share yet. The picnic by the creek became a treasured memory for all of them. James splashed in the shallow water while Emma collected wildflowers, and Beatrice allowed herself to relax under the shade of a cottonwood tree. By the time they returned to town, the strangers had moved on, and Tucker greeted them with warm smiles and no questions. That night, after the children were asleep, Beatrice found Tucker sitting on the back steps of the store whittling a small piece of wood. "May I join you?" she asked hesitantly. He moved over, making space beside him. "Always welcome." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the gentle scrape of his knife against wood and the distant piano from the saloon. "It was my husband," Beatrice finally said, her voice barely audible. "Those men today, they reminded me of his associates." Tucker's hands stilled, but he didn't look at her, giving her the privacy to speak without scrutiny. "Henry Morgan was a charming man when I married him, a businessman," he said. She laughed bitterly. "I didn't realize until too late that his business was cheating people out of their money and threatening anyone who complained." Tucker resumed his whittling, the steady motion somehow encouraging her to continue. "He was cruel, not at first, but after Emma was born, something changed. He'd disappear for weeks, then return drunk and violent." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I stayed because I had nowhere to go, and then James came along. I thought maybe having a son would settle him." "It didn't," Tucker guessed softly. Beatrice shook her head. "It got worse. The last time," her voice broke, "he nearly killed me in front of the children. Something in Emma's eyes that night, the fear, the hatred, it gave me the courage to leave. We ran while he was passed out drunk." "Is he looking for you?" "Probably," she admitted. "Not because he loves us, but because we're his property. He doesn't like losing what belongs to him." Tucker set down his knife and the small wooden horse he'd been carving. "You don't belong to anyone, Beatrice, not anymore." She looked up at him then, searching his face for judgment or pity and finding neither. "I'm putting you in danger by staying here." "I can handle myself," Tucker said simply, "and this town protects its own." "We're not." "You are," he interrupted firmly. "Whether you stay a month or a lifetime, you and those children are part of Willow Creek now." Impulsively, Beatrice reached for his hand, squeezing it briefly. "Thank you for listening." Tucker's fingers curled gently around hers before releasing them. "Thank you for trusting me with your story." As summer turned to fall, Beatrice found herself putting down tentative roots in Willow Creek. Emma started attending the small schoolhouse, where the elderly substitute teacher declared her a natural scholar. James spent his days divided between helping at the store and following Tucker around like an adoring shadow. For Beatrice, each day brought a new kind of peace she hadn't thought possible. The nightmares that had plagued her since their escape gradually became less frequent, though she still found herself scanning the faces of strangers who passed through town. Tucker noticed everything but commented on little, offering steady support without pressure. He taught James to whittle small animals, showed Emma how to calculate change for customers, and somehow always knew when Beatrice needed a moment alone to collect herself. "He's sweet on you," Martha from the cafe informed Beatrice one afternoon as she delivered lunch to the store. "Never seen Tucker Hayes fuss over anyone the way he does over you and those children." "We're just friends," Beatrice protested, her cheeks warming. "He's been kind, that's all." Martha raised an eyebrow. "Honey, that man hasn't shown interest in any woman since Sarah Miller turned him down 5 years ago. Now he's walking around town whistling and bringing in special orders of peppermint sticks because James mentioned liking them once." Beatrice couldn't deny that Tucker's thoughtfulness extended far beyond what simple charity required. There were the books he found for Emma, the way he'd built a small step behind the counter so James could see customers better, the fresh flowers that appeared on their table every Sunday morning. And there was the way he looked at her when he thought she wouldn't notice, not with hunger or possession like Henry had, but with something gentle and patient that made her heart flutter in a way she'd long forgotten it could. One crisp October afternoon, Tucker closed the store early. "Got a surprise for you all," he announced, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "What kind of surprise?" James asked, bouncing with excitement. "The kind you have to see to believe," Tucker replied mysteriously. "Miss Emma, would you be so kind as to fetch your mother's shawl? It's getting chilly out." 20 minutes later, they were in Tucker's wagon, Penny trotting steadily along a road that led away from town and into the foothills. Emma and James chattered excitedly in the back while Beatrice sat beside Tucker, acutely aware of his arm occasionally brushing hers as he guided the horse. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. Tucker smiled. "Patience, Miss Morgan, some things are worth the wait." They rounded a bend, and suddenly a small cabin came into view, smoke rising cheerfully from its chimney. A split-rail fence enclosed a modest yard, and beyond it, the land opened up to a meadow backed by pine forest. "What is this place?" Beatrice asked as Tucker brought the wagon to a halt. "My home," he said simply. "Built it myself when I first came to Willow Creek. Figured it was time you saw where I disappear to on Sundays." The cabin was everything a frontier home should be: sturdy, practical, and surprisingly comfortable. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, while handmade furniture arranged with care spoke of Tucker's skill with wood. Bookshelves lined another wall, filled with well-worn volumes. "It's lovely," Beatrice said honestly, running her fingers along a polished table. Tucker rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly looking boyishly nervous. "Thought we might have supper here. Got a stew that's been simmering all day." The meal was delicious, and the evening passed in easy conversation and laughter. Tucker showed James his collection of carved animals, delighting the boy by gifting him several pieces. Emma discovered Tucker's checkerboard, and soon she was engaged in a fierce battle of wits with him, her small face scrunched in concentration. As dusk fell, Tucker built up the fire and brought out a fiddle that had belonged to his father. "Not much for entertainment out here," he apologized, "but music helps pass the long evenings." The simple melodies he played transported Beatrice to a simpler time, before fear had become her constant companion. Without thinking, she began to sing along to a familiar folk song, her clear voice blending perfectly with the fiddle's plaintive notes. Tucker's eyes widened in surprise and pleasure. "You've been hiding your talents, Miss Morgan," she blushed. "I used to sing to the children when they were babies. Haven't had much cause for music lately. You should sing more often," he said softly. "Most beautiful sound I've heard in years." Something in his gaze made her breath catch, and for a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to belong here permanently in this cabin, with this gentle man who asked for nothing but gave everything. The spell was broken by James yawning widely, and reality rushed back. They weren't a family, no matter how it might appear to an outside observer. She was still a woman on the run, still carrying the scars of her past. The ride back to town was quiet, the children sleeping against her sides, exhausted from the excitement. Tucker helped carry them up to the room above the store, his movements careful not to wake them. "Thank you for today," Beatrice said as he prepared to leave. "It was perfect." Tucker paused at the door. "Beatrice, he stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." She sensed there was something more he wanted to say, but neither of them seemed ready for whatever it might be. Instead, he tipped his hat and bid her good night, leaving Beatrice with a curious mixture of contentment and longing. The following weeks brought a noticeable shift in their relationship. Nothing was said outright, but there were lingering glances, hands that touched a moment longer than necessary when passing items in the store, and conversations that stretched late into the evening after the children were asleep. Beatrice found herself looking forward to these moments, even as a part of her warned against growing too attached. Tucker never pushed, never presumed, but his steady presence became as essential to her as breathing. The first snow of winter fell in early November, transforming Willow Creek into a scene from a Christmas card. Tucker insisted on taking the children sledding, returning them rosy-cheeked and laughing, with tales of Tucker's spectacular tumble into a snowbank. "Your mama should come next time," Tucker told them as they warmed up with hot chocolate in the store. "Bet she'd outrace both of you down that hill." "Mama used to ice skate," Emma informed him proudly. "She said she was the fastest girl in her town." Tucker raised an eyebrow at Beatrice. "Is that so? Hidden talents continue to emerge, Miss Morgan." "A lifetime ago," Beatrice demurred, though the memory was a happy one. "Before I was a mother and had to be sensible." "Being sensible is overrated," Tucker declared, winking at the children. "Sometimes you need to slide down a hill on a piece of wood just to remember you're alive." That evening, as they closed up shop, Tucker seemed unusually nervous, Beatrice, I've been meaning to ask you something, her heart quickened. Yes, town's having its harvest dance this Saturday. It's nothing fancy, just folks getting together at the meeting hall for music and food. He fidgeted with his hat. Thought maybe you and the children might like to go, with me, that is. The invitation shouldn't have felt momentous. They'd shared meals and outings before, but something in Tucker's manner suggested this was different. Are you asking me to accompany you to a dance, Mr. Hayes? She asked, a teasing note in her voice she scarcely recognized as her own. Tucker's smile was equal parts relief and delight. I believe I am, Miss Morgan. Then I accept on behalf of myself and my children. The days leading up to the dance passed in a flurry of excitement. Martha helped Beatrice refashion an old dress, adding lace from Tucker's store to freshen it. Emma practiced her curtsy, while James solemnly asked Tucker how gentlemen were supposed to behave at dances. Saturday evening arrived clear and cold, with stars sparkling like diamonds above the snow-covered town. Tucker appeared at their door in his Sunday best, hair slicked down and a bunch of dried winter berries and evergreen sprigs in his hand. For the lady of the house, he said, presenting them to Beatrice with a slight bow that made the children giggle. Beatrice felt a blush rise to her cheeks as she accepted the simple bouquet. They're lovely, Tucker, thank you. You look beautiful, he said quietly, his eyes taking in her blue dress and carefully arranged hair. So does Mama, James announced, oblivious to the moment passing between the adults. She's the prettiest mama in all of Wyoming Territory. Tucker grinned down at the boy. Can't argue with that assessment, partner. The meeting hall was transformed with lanterns and pine boughs, and it seemed the entire town had turned out for the celebration. A small band played lively tunes while tables groaned under the weight of potluck contributions. Emma and James were quickly swept into a children's game in one corner, leaving Beatrice and Tucker standing somewhat awkwardly by the punch bowl. Would you care to dance? Tucker asked as the band struck up a waltz. Beatrice hesitated. It's been a long time. I'm not much of a dancer myself, Tucker admitted. We can stumble through it together. His self-deprecating humor eased her nerves, and she allowed him to lead her to the dance floor. His hand was warm and steady at her waist, and after a few uncertain steps, they found their rhythm. See. Not so terrible, Tucker murmured, guiding her through a turn. You're a better dancer than you let on, Mr. Hayes, she accused lightly, his eyes crinkled with amusement. Maybe I just needed the right partner. As they moved together, Beatrice became aware of curious glances and approving smiles from the townspeople. It was clear that Tucker was well respected in Willow Creek, and equally clear that their growing closeness had not gone unnoticed. People are watching us, she whispered. Let them, Tucker replied simply. Got nothing to hide. The evening passed in a blur of dancing, laughter, and conversation. Tucker introduced Beatrice to people she hadn't yet met in the store, and she was touched by how many inquired genuinely about her children and her comfort in their town. Willow Creek takes care of its own, the elderly mayor told her as they shared a slice of apple pie. Tucker says you're thinking of staying on permanent-like. Beatrice shot Tucker a surprised look. I haven't decided yet. Well, we'd be pleased to have you, the mayor continued. Need more young families to keep this place growing. And it does an old heart good to see Tucker looking happy again. Later, as they walked home under a canopy of stars, the children running ahead to scoop up fresh snow, Beatrice found the courage to ask what had been on her mind all evening. Did you tell people I'm staying permanently? Tucker shook his head. Told them I was hoping you would. There's a difference. The honesty in his voice made her stop walking. Tucker, he turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. I know you're scared, Beatrice. Know you've got reasons to keep running, but I've watched you these past months, watched how you've started to stand straighter, laugh easier. He took a deep breath. You and those children belong here as much as anyone, more than most. It's not that simple, she whispered, though she wished desperately that it could be. Never said it was simple, Tucker replied, reaching out to brush a snowflake from her cheek. Just said it was right. The touch of his fingers against her skin sent warmth coursing through her despite the cold night air. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her, wanted him to, but a shout from James broke the spell. Mama, Tucker, look, I made a snow angel." Tucker stepped back, his smile returning though something wistful lingered in his eyes. Better go admire that angel before he catches his death of cold. That night, long after the children were asleep, Beatrice stood by the window watching snowflakes dance in the lamplight below. Tucker had awakened feelings she'd thought dead forever, but fear still held her back. Not just fear of Henry finding them, but fear of trusting her heart to someone again, fear of being wrong about the goodness she saw in Tucker Hayes. A week after the dance, disaster struck. Beatrice was alone in the store, Tucker having gone to pick up a shipment from the railroad station 15 miles away when the door swung open. The customer's face was hidden beneath a heavy coat and hat, but something about his posture made her blood run cold. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, hating the tremor in her voice. The man approached the counter slowly, deliberately, and when he removed his hat, Beatrice's worst nightmare stood before her. Henry Morgan looked older, harder, his once handsome face now ravaged by drink and dissipation, but his eyes were the same cold and calculating. "Hello, Beatrice," he said pleasantly, as if they'd parted on good terms. "Took me a while to find you." Beatrice gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. "How did you think I don't have friends in every territory?" Henry sneered. Station master in Cheyenne remembered a pretty woman with 2 children heading west. From there, it was just a matter of checking every miserable little town along the line. "What do you want?" Beatrice asked, though she already knew Henry's smile didn't reach his eyes. "My family, of course. A man has the right to his wife and children." He glanced around the store. "Though I see you've made yourself quite comfortable here. Found yourself a protector, have you?" "Mr. Hayes is my employer," Beatrice said firmly. "Nothing more." "Is that what you tell yourself?" Henry laughed, the sound sending shivers down her spine. "Always were a terrible liar, Bea." The use of the old nickname made her flinch. "The children are at school. They won't be back until I know exactly where they are," Henry interrupted. "Watched them running into that pathetic little schoolhouse this morning. Quite the dutiful mother you've become." His tone hardened. "Get their things packed. We're leaving on the evening stage." Panic rose in Beatrice's throat. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Henry leaned across the counter, his face inches from hers. "You don't have a choice. You're my wife, and those are my children. Law's on my side, Beatrice." "The law doesn't protect women whose husbands beat them within an inch of their lives," she hissed, finding courage in her fear for her children. "Your word against mine," Henry shrugged. "And who's going to believe a woman who abandoned her husband and ran off to live with another man?" "Everyone in this town knows me," Beatrice insisted. "They won't let you take us." Something dangerous flashed in Henry's eyes. "Test me on that and you'll regret it. I can be reasonable, Beatrice. Come quietly and no one gets hurt. Make a fuss." He left the threat hanging. The bell above the door jangled, and Martha from the cafe entered, carrying a basket covered with a checkered cloth. "Brought you some of those biscuits Tucker's so fond of." She stopped short, sensing the tension. "Everything all right, Beatrice?" Henry's demeanor changed instantly, charm replacing menace. "Just having a reunion with my wife. I'm Henry Morgan, madam, Beatrice's husband." Martha's eyes widened, darting between them. "Husband? Former husband," Beatrice corrected desperately. "We're divorced." Henry's laugh was patronizing. "Now, darling, you know that's not true. Been searching high and low for my family, miss them terribly." Martha's expression grew wary. "Well, Mr. Morgan, Beatrice and those children have become quite dear to us here in Willow Creek. Perhaps you'd like to join us for supper at the cafe tonight. Get to know the town a bit." Beatrice saw the strategy in Martha's suggestion: delay, give Tucker time to return, and felt a surge of gratitude. "That's very kind," Henry said smoothly, "but we'll be catching the evening stage. Family business back east needs attending to." "Such a shame," Martha replied, her voice overly bright. "Tucker will be so disappointed to miss you. He's due back any minute now." Henry's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Another time, perhaps. Now, if you'll excuse us, my wife and I have arrangements to make." Martha set down her basket, making no move to leave. "Beatrice, those invoices for the Schmidt order still need checking. Why don't I stay and mind the store while you and your visitor catch up in the back room?" The offer was a lifeline, and Beatrice seized it. "Thank you, Martha." "This way, Henry." In the storeroom, away from Martha's protective presence, Henry's facade dropped. "Who is this Tucker everyone's so concerned about? Your lover?" "He's a good man," Beatrice said simply, "which is something you'd know nothing about." Henry grabbed her arm, fingers digging painfully into her flesh. "You've gotten bold while you've been playing house in this backwater. Don't forget who you belong to." "I don't belong to anyone," Beatrice said, the words Tucker had spoken to her giving her strength. "And neither do my children." "Our children," Henry corrected coldly. "And if you think I'm leaving without them, you're mistaken. One way or another, they're coming with me today." The threat against her children ignited something primal in Beatrice. "Touch them, and I swear I'll kill you myself." Henry's hand shot out, striking her across the face with enough force to send her staggering back against a shelf. "Still haven't learned your place," he snarled. "Maybe you need a reminder of what happens when you defy me." As he advanced on her, Beatrice frantically looked for anything to defend herself with. Her hand closed around a heavy inventory ledger, and she swung it with all her might, catching Henry on the side of the head. He stumbled, cursing violently, and Beatrice bolted for the door. Martha turned in alarm as she burst into the main store, Henry close behind her. "Ring the bell," Beatrice shouted. "Get help," Martha, bless her, didn't hesitate. She grabbed the emergency bell kept under the counter and ran outside, its clanging instantly drawing attention up and down the street. Henry reached for Beatrice again, but the commotion had already brought the blacksmith and two ranch hands running into the store. "What's going on here?" the blacksmith demanded, his massive frame blocking the door. "This man is trying to take my children," Beatrice said, her cheek throbbing where Henry had struck her. "He's not welcome in Willow Creek." Henry straightened his coat, attempting to regain his composure. "There's been a misunderstanding. This woman is my wife, and she took my children without permission. I'm within my rights. That mark on her face says otherwise," the blacksmith interrupted, nodding toward Beatrice's reddening cheek. "She attacked me first," Henry insisted, touching the spot where the ledger had connected with his temple. "I was defending myself." Outside, more townspeople were gathering, drawn by Martha's frantic explanations. Among them were the sheriff and, to Beatrice's horror, Emma and James, who must have heard the commotion from the schoolhouse down the street. "Mama," Emma called, pushing past the adults at the door, James close behind her. Henry's face lit up with artificial warmth. "Emma, James. Come give your father a hug." The children froze, their small faces draining of color. James instantly burst into tears while Emma stepped in front of her brother protectively. "You're not our father anymore," she said with a child's fierce certainty. "Tucker says we don't have to be afraid of you now." Henry's expression darkened dangerously. "That's so, and where is this Tucker who's been filling your heads with nonsense?" As if summoned by the question, the crowd at the door parted, and Tucker Hayes strode into the store, his normally gentle face set in hard lines. He took in the scene in an instant, Beatrice's bruised face, the terrified children, Henry's threatening posture. "I'm right here," Tucker said quietly, but there was steel beneath the words. "And you're trespassing in my store and threatening my family." Henry laughed incredulously. "Your family? These are my wife and children, Cowboy, laws on my side." The sheriff, a weathered man named Bill Dawson, stepped forward. "That's so, because I've got witnesses saying you struck a woman and threatened children. Territory of Wyoming takes a dim view of that, law or no law." "It's my word against hers," Henry insisted, though he was beginning to look less certain. "And the word of everyone in this town," Martha added firmly. "Beatrice and those children have been nothing but a blessing to Willow Creek. Can't say the same for you, Mr. Morgan." Tucker moved to stand beside Beatrice, one arm going protectively around her shoulders while the other gestured for the children to come to them. They ran over immediately, pressing against Beatrice's skirts. "Here's what's going to happen," Tucker said, his voice deceptively calm. "You're going to walk out of here, get on your horse, and ride out of town. You're never going to come back, and you're never going to bother this family again," Henry sneered. "Or what? You'll shoot me? That'll look good for your reputation, gunning down a man trying to reclaim his family." "Won't come to that," Sheriff Dawson said. "Because if you don't leave peacefully, I'm arresting you for assault. Trial won't be for months, and the jail here isn't what you'd call comfortable." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Henry's face as he looked around at the hostile crowd. Self-preservation had always been his strongest instinct, and even he could see that he was outnumbered. "This isn't over," he said to Beatrice. "You can't hide forever." "She doesn't need to hide," Tucker replied. "She's got a whole town standing with her now." Under the sheriff's watchful eye, Henry was escorted to his horse and watched until he rode out of sight. Only then did Beatrice's composure crack, tears streaming down her face as the terror of the confrontation caught up with her. Tucker gathered her and the children into his arms, his solid presence anchoring them as the townspeople quietly dispersed, Martha promising to return later with supper for all of them. "He'll come back," Beatrice whispered when they were alone in the store. "He never gives up when he thinks something belongs to him." Tucker's arms tightened around her. "Then we'll be ready, but I don't think he will, Beatrice. Men like that are cowards at heart. He saw this town stand up for you, saw that you're not alone anymore." "What if the law really is on his side?" she asked, the fear still gripping her heart. "Sheriffs sending telegrams to authorities in every town Henry Morgan's likely to pass through," Tucker assured her. "That mark on your face and the testimony of a dozen witnesses is enough to warrant charges." "He won't risk coming back." That evening, after the children were finally asleep, exhausted from the day's trauma, Tucker and Beatrice sat by the fire he'd built in the small stove. "I should leave," Beatrice said, staring into the flames. "It's not fair to bring this danger to your door." Tucker took her hand, his thumb gently tracing circles on her palm. "Running won't solve anything, Beatrice. It'll just mean starting over somewhere without friends to protect you." "I can't ask you to take on my problems," she insisted. "You've done too much already." "You didn't ask," Tucker pointed out. "I offered. There's a difference." "Why?" The question had been building for months. "Why have you done all this for us, for me?" Tucker was quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. "When you stepped off that stagecoach, something told me you were important, not just another traveler passing through, but someone who mattered." He met her eyes. "Then I got to know you, your strength, your kindness, the way you'd do anything for those children, and I realized." "What?" Beatrice whispered when he hesitated. "I realized I'd been waiting for you," Tucker said simply. "All these years in Willow Creek, building a life, a business, even that cabin, I was preparing for something I couldn't name. Now I can." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "It was you, Beatrice. I was waiting for you." The honest declaration broke something open inside her, a wall she'd built around her heart, crumbling beneath the weight of his sincerity and her own longing. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Not just of Henry, but of trusting again, of believing this could be real." "It is real," Tucker assured her. "Real as this town, real as those sleeping children, real as my heart that's been yours since you first walked into my store." Beatrice looked at this man who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect, who had defended her and her children without hesitation, who looked at her not as property but as a partner. "I think I love you, Tucker Hayes," she said, the words both terrifying and freeing. His smile could have lit the darkest night. "I know I love you, Beatrice Morgan, have for months now." When he leaned forward to kiss her, it was gentle and questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. Instead, Beatrice moved closer, her hand coming up to touch his face as she returned the kiss with all the emotion she'd kept contained for so long. Winter deepened across Wyoming Territory, blanketing Willow Creek in snow that transformed the frontier town into something magical. Christmas approached, bringing with it a sense of anticipation that had nothing to do with the holiday. Tucker had formally asked Beatrice to marry him on a crisp December evening, getting down on one knee in the snow outside the general store while the children watched from the window above, giggling with delight. The entire town celebrated the news, Martha declaring it about time while organizing an impromptu engagement party at the cafe. The wedding was set for Christmas Eve, a date chosen as much for practicality as romance. The traveling circuit judge would be in town, and the meeting hall would already be decorated for the holiday celebration. "Are you nervous?" Emma asked on the morning of the wedding, watching her mother pin up her hair. Beatrice smiled at her daughter's reflection in the small mirror. "A little, but the good kind of nervous, like butterflies." Tucker says butterflies in your stomach mean you're doing something important, Emma said solemnly. He's a wise man, your Tucker, Beatrice replied, touched by how completely the children had embraced him. James burst into the room, already dressed in his new suit, his hair slicked down with water. Martha says it's almost time, and Tucker's pacing around the cafe looking scared. Beatrice laughed. Tell Martha I'll be right there, and tell Tucker. She paused, considering. Tell him he'll only know peace here with us. The meeting hall had been transformed with evergreen boughs, red ribbons, and dozens of candles that bathed the room in golden light. The entire town had turned out, dressed in their holiday finest, creating a sea of smiling faces as Beatrice walked down the makeshift aisle on Sheriff Dawson's arm, Emma and James preceding her with solemn importance. Tucker waited at the front, his expression one of wonder and devotion as he watched her approach. He'd never looked more handsome, dressed in a new suit ordered specially from Denver, his normally unruly hair tamed for the occasion. "You're beautiful," he whispered as she reached him, taking her hands in his. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, with promises of love, respect, and partnership exchanged before their friends and neighbors. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Tucker's kiss was both tender and promising, drawing cheers from the crowd. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night with music, dancing, and enough food to feed the town twice over. Tucker danced with Emma standing on his boots, taught James to properly twirl a partner, and never let Beatrice stray too far from his side. "Happy, Mrs. Hayes?" he asked as they shared a quiet moment by the punch bowl. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Beatrice admitted, leaning into his side. "Though I'm still getting used to the name. We've got a lifetime for you to practice," Tucker promised, dropping a kiss on her forehead. Later, after the children had been settled at Martha's for the night, her wedding gift to them, Tucker brought Beatrice to the cabin that would now be their home. He carried her across the threshold despite her laughing protests, setting her down only when they reached the fireplace where a welcoming blaze already burned. "Welcome home," he said softly, his eyes reflecting the firelight. Beatrice looked around at the cabin, noting the changes since her last visit, Emma's books arranged on a new shelf, James's carved animals displayed proudly on the mantel, a rocking chair by the window that hadn't been there before. "You've been planning this for a while," she realized, touching the chair that was clearly meant for her. Tucker nodded. "Started making changes the day after you first visited. Hoped you'd say yes eventually." "I never stood a chance, did I?" she teased, moving into his embrace. "Neither did I," he admitted, holding her close. "Was lost the moment you stepped off that stagecoach, looking fierce and frightened and more beautiful than anything I'd ever seen." That night, as snow fell softly outside the cabin windows, Beatrice finally allowed herself to believe in the future Tucker had promised, one where fear had no place, where her children would grow up safe and loved, where her heart could heal completely in the care of a man who treasured rather than possessed her. Spring came early to Willow Creek the following year, bringing with it new beginnings. The general store expanded, adding a section for books and school supplies at Beatrice's suggestion. Emma excelled in school, showing a talent for mathematics that surprised everyone except Tucker, who had seen her quick mind at work in the store. James spent his days divided between helping with Tucker's new delivery service and tending to the small flock of chickens he'd been given responsibility for at the cabin. And Beatrice found herself expecting their first child together, a joyful secret she shared with Tucker on a warm May evening as they sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold. A baby. Tucker's voice cracked with emotion as his hand gently covered her still flat stomach. "You're sure?" Beatrice nodded, her own eyes shining with happy tears. "Martha confirmed it yesterday. She said it's early days yet, but everything seems healthy." Tucker pulled her into his arms, his kiss expressing everything words couldn't: gratitude, love, and the promise of a future neither of them had dared imagine when she'd first arrived in Willow Creek, frightened and alone. "Should we tell the children?" he asked when they finally drew apart. "Tomorrow," Beatrice decided. "Tonight it's just our secret." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, Tucker's arm around her shoulders, her head resting against his chest. In the distance, a coyote called, answered by another far away, while closer to home. The soft whickering of Penny in her new stable and the clucking of James's chickens settling for the night created a peaceful symphony of the life they'd built together. "You know," Tucker said thoughtfully, "that first day when you looked so lost and afraid at the stagecoach stop, I told you that you'd only know peace here." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Never dreamed how much peace you'd bring me in return." Beatrice smiled, thinking of the frightened woman she'd been and the journey that had brought her to this moment. "That's what happens when you stop running from the past," she said softly. "You find room in your heart for the future." As stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, Beatrice Hayes Morgan, once a woman defined by fear, felt the last shadows of her old life fade away, replaced by the certainty that here, in this place, with this man and their growing family, she had finally found her true home. Not just a place of safety, but a place of belonging, of love freely given and received, of the peace that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be.